Hi, it's Tony Verhoeven, and I am at the Irving, Texas 2024 Technical Seminar put on by NAFA. And I'm in the empty ballroom here while the reception's going on, missing all the fun because I'm going to record a couple podcast episodes. But don't worry, I'll get out there in a second. I wanted to tell you that this is a great episode. If you are working with indoor cannabis grow facilities or vegetable indoor grow facilities, this is a great one to listen to. This is Dr. Nadia Sabeh, or sometimes we call her Dr. Greenhouse. Growing crops indoors allows farmers to control many of the variables of production, including water, nutrients, lighting, and climate. Keeping the air free and clear of contaminants also improves crop quality and yield and helps to ensure consumer and food safety. Many indoor farmers use a combination of air filters, air purification systems, and good sanitation practices to avoid and eliminate mold spores, bacteria, VOCs, chemicals, and other potential sources of contamination in their facilities. In this presentation, Dr. Sabeh will review the efficacy and necessity of using various technologies that are commonly used and sometimes misused in indoor plant environments, including cannabis. Enjoy this one.
You're listening to the Talking Air Filtration podcast, where you get to know the people that make air filtration possible and help us all breathe easier. Because clean air matters.
We'll get insights from air filtration professionals and learn how they became successful in their careers. Along the way, we will discuss best practices, guidelines, trends, and challenges in air filtration in a variety of applications. We hope HVAC, air filtration, and indoor air quality pros, including business development, engineering, building owners, and facilities management, will enjoy the insights our guests will bring to this podcast.
I'll admit, I was really excited in March of 2020 to attend this conference because, of course, air quality was a really big deal when COVID was first emerging. So I wanted to hear all the news and all the thoughts around air filtration and air purification and cleanliness as it related to COVID and airborne viruses. So thank you for bringing me back and for all the people who invited me and asked me to come back. I'm excited to be here. So my company, Dr. Greenhouse, I started Dr. Greenhouse officially January of 2017. So we've been in business almost 6 years. I started as a sole prop by myself and then grew into now a company of 8 people. We are mechanical and agricultural engineers specializing in HVAC design for indoor farms. It doesn't matter what kind of indoor farm. You could be a greenhouse, you could be a vertical farm, an indoor cannabis farm, a container farm. Whatever it is that you're trying to grow plants in, we want to help you be successful by managing the climate well. We have worked on over 150 projects all over the world. We are now have touched 32 states in the country, including Washington, D.C., 6 Canadian provinces, and 6 other countries. So when it comes to understanding the codes, the standards, the nuances of different climates and different jurisdictions, we are all in. We are based in Sacramento, California, which has a lot of agricultural and farming infrastructure. One of the reasons why we wanted to stay there, even though we have, maybe arguably one of the best climates and soil in the world, and we don't need to grow indoors, we are being challenged, of course, with climate change, with smoke, with water resources. And so protected and indoor agriculture is becoming more of an interest, more even as a tool for existing field farmers. I just wanted to say, when I interview potential people, culture is number one. Personality also. Technical skills, you can teach technical skills, but you can't teach people to be the people that you want them to be, right? So I start with an icebreaker question because we deal with food and plants. I always start with, what is your favorite food? Or what is your favorite plant, right? Just to get the things going. But also one of the big questions that I like to ask, just to help answer this question, is what is the mark you want to leave on the world? Right? In some form or question, I ask that question because I want to know, right? Do they want to help people? Do they want to help society? Do they want to help the planet? Or are they just there for a paycheck, right? Let me get to know about you. How many of you have designed or sold systems for an indoor growing environment? Like maybe 25% of you? Okay. Let me just ask, is it the same or different than selling systems or designing systems for a human environment? Different? Okay. The indoor farm. Some of the names you would hear for an indoor farm: controlled environment agriculture. This is the industry term that we all use. So if you hear CEA or controlled environment agriculture, you are talking to academics, researchers, most industry professionals that have been in the industry for a long time. In California, we called it controlled environment horticulture because the acronym CEA was already taken by the California Energy Alliance, so they didn't want to get it confused. And now that we have an energy code starting January 1, everybody in California, they needed a new acronym, and so they called it controlled environment horticulture. You will also hear indoor plant environment in ASHRAE, in ASABE. This is a term that we are trying to establish indoor plant environment without sunlight to distinguish it from a greenhouse in that it needs all supplemental electrical lighting to grow plants. In Asia, plant factory with artificial lighting, PFAL is the term that you will hear. And then of course there's a bunch of colloquial terms: indoor grow, indoor farm, indoor agriculture, indoor garden, indoor plant production, protected agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. We're all talking the same thing, but we have different terms for it. There are many types of controlled environment agriculture facilities. On the top, those are all cannabis facilities. The top left is a greenhouse that has supplemental high pressure sodium lighting. In the middle is a double stack cannabis farm using LED lighting. And on the right is a single level cannabis farm using high pressure sodium lighting. On the bottom, we have vegetables growing. Bottom left is tomatoes growing in a greenhouse. In the middle is lettuce. That is lettuce growing in towers in a greenhouse with some supplemental lighting. And on the right, this is what we all call a vertical farm. This is lettuce growing in levels in a large warehouse, maybe 25, 35 feet tall, growing thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of plants in the single room. There are a lot of crops. This is not just cannabis. Cannabis, thank you, cannabis, for injecting the money and injecting the resources and injecting the product development and technology development into controlled environment agriculture as a whole. They had the money to burn, and they burned it for us to have food in the future grown indoors. Thank you. So it's not just cannabis. We have lettuce, we have mushrooms, tomatoes, melons, eggplant. I don't know, what else is up there? Strawberries, microgreens. You guys know what microgreens are? Those little sprouts that cost, $10 an ounce or whatever that you get on your salad that are so pretty, chocked full of nutrients. We have basil. And I wanted to do a shout out to corn. Not corn necessarily, but research. A lot of the research that's done on our agronomic crops like soy and corn and wheat, a lot of the breeding, a lot of the pesticide development is done in greenhouses, in controlled environments, growing these crops because they can grow year-round. They don't have to wait until the weather is perfect in Iowa to test their breeding programs or to do their breeding programs. So why do we grow crops indoors? Because we can grow anytime, anywhere. That's number one. Also, because we can get much more consistent product quality because we're creating a consistent environment, a lighting environment, an irrigation, a nutrient, a climate environment. It doesn't matter what's going on outside. We can be consistent. We can also grow in really high crop densities, right? You think about that vertical farm. To grow that amount of lettuce outside would take acres and acres and hectares of land to grow in something that you could do in 10,000 square feet, in a quarter of an acre. We can manage pests. We're going to talk about that today, right? We're keeping the pests out because we're within 4 walls and a roof. We can potentially use less water by irrigating the plants exactly what they need when they need it, not relying on the rain to deliver water when we need it, or having these huge irrigation canals and systems like we do in California to take water from over there to grow plants over here, right? We can do it all here. We can potentially reduce waste. We can also improve consumer safety if we have good air and water quality and food safety implemented, and potentially improve our food security for all people on this globe, because again, we don't have to rely on the weather or Mother Nature to give the plants what we need to grow the food that we need, both in calories and in nutrients. And ultimately, right, if people are growing indoors, they're trying to maximize their profitability and minimize risks. So, controlled environment agriculture is controlling the variables. It's controlling the climate, the irrigation, the lighting, the pests, ultimately to control the quality of what it is that they are growing. So, I am an HVAC engineer, and so I'm going to talk about climate and air quality. I am not going to go deep into the climate side because you are all air quality people, I believe. But there are sort of 2 pieces that HVAC, sort of big 2 pieces, 2 umbrella pieces of managing the environment that HVAC is involved with. One, of course, is climate, right? The environment, the air that we're all breathing and sitting in, right? Like, are you guys all comfortable? I'm actually pretty comfortable, but if I'm comfortable, it probably means some of you are cold. So we're managing the temperature, the humidity, right? And the air movement around people, in this case, around plants, to make us all comfortable where we're sitting, standing, working, etc. But HVAC is also important in terms of air quality control, not just climate control. We rely on the HVAC system to deliver carbon dioxide to our plants. In this environment, we rely on the HVAC system to eliminate carbon dioxide, right? In the plant environment, it's different. Also, other gases, right? The formaldehyde, right? That's off-gassing from the furniture and the glues that are in this room, right? The HVAC system is helping to eliminate those gases. Also, to keep out particulates and pests, and hopefully maybe filter out some of the pathogens that could harm us or harm our plants. Let's talk about CO2 for just a moment. We all know, as animals, as humans, right, that we need oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide, right? We are aerobic organisms. Plants, on the other hand, they need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Plants are super cool because unlike animals that need to eat food in order to gain their energy, they produce their own food by converting the carbon dioxide in the air into hydrocarbons, into energy, and into the building blocks of their leaves and stems and fruits and flowers that we then consume. They are the first responders to carbon. Without plants, we wouldn't have the animals that eat them, and we wouldn't have the food to eat ourselves. So they need CO2 to grow and to live. The higher the carbon dioxide level in their atmosphere, the faster they will grow. Now, there's actually some research that is showing that wheat, for example, that is growing really fast under our elevated CO2 levels, ambient elevated CO2 levels, actually have a lower nutrient density than ones that were grown 50 or 100 years ago because they're growing so fast, they can't take up the nutrients at the same rate. But that's besides the point because we all care about calories more than nutrients. Just kidding. So anyway, I talk really fast if you haven't noticed. But, at least we want to maintain as close to ambient, because if we don't, we literally starve plants if they don't have carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. So most growers are targeting somewhere between ambient and you can see as high as 1,500 parts per million. Now, you guys probably know ASHRAE came out with a position paper not too long ago, right, about carbon dioxide. It was kind of a bunch of nothing, in my opinion. They didn't really take a stand on anything, but they did recognize, right, that CO2 is not a toxin. I know that's been really controversial in our industry, right? Is CO2 a toxin or not? And they said, no, it's not, but maybe it can be like a measure of other toxins that are in the air, right? So indirectly, we can determine the air quality through CO2. But we also all recognize there's a lot of research that's been coming out that shows that CO2 levels above 1,000 parts per million really affect our cognitive ability. I wish I had a CO2 meter in here because I'd be curious to know what the CO2 level is. The air conditioner came on. Hopefully it has the proper amount of outside air coming in for us.
Are your air filtration personnel NAFA certified? Ask if they belong to NAFA and have their certified air filter specialist or NAFA certified technician designations. The CAFS and NCT designations are earned after rigorous exams and demonstrate that the air filtration professional has a high degree of knowledge and professionalism. To learn more about NAFA certifications, visit nafahq.org.
So, gases. Yes, carbon dioxide is a gas, and yes, plants need that, but there are other gases that can be harmful to plants. Ethylene is the big one. We don't care so much about ethylene. We care more maybe about carbon monoxide and NOx and SOx. They care about ethylene. Ethylene is that gas. If somebody, have you ever heard, oh, you have unripe avocado, stick it in a bag with a banana? Have you guys all heard this? That banana, as it's ripening, is giving off ethylene, which then helps the avocado ripen itself. Fun fact, avocados don't ripen on the tree. You have to harvest an avocado in order for it to ripen. So you can speed up that process by setting it next to another ripening fruit, like a banana. But also ethylene causes leaf abscission. We are in autumn right now. All those plants are giving off ethylene and causing the leaves to basically fall. It causes flower shattering. So if you have elevated levels of ethylene, the flowers on plants will actually burst and shatter. We want to avoid that, and causes this chlorophyll degradation. What's interesting is that plants are all normally that red color. It's the chlorophyll that makes them green. And they only produce chlorophyll when there's carbon dioxide and light available. So when in the fall right now, when everything is turning red, it's actually degrading chlorophyll, leaving the natural plant color behind, which is that red and yellow. Formaldehyde, just like us, bad for plants. Most of this is anecdotal. There hasn't been a lot of research on it, but there's a lot of evidence that it affects plants in a deleterious way. What about the gases plants emit? Volatile organic compounds. I know there's probably a lot of you in this room that have heard about the odors, and odor mitigation and odor control when it comes to cannabis because they produce a stinky smell. Well, originally a lot of people thought, oh, maybe it's the pinene and the limonene and all these like different smells that we associate with cannabis that, well, lime smells and pine smells and mango smells, those all smell good. Why is weed smell skunky? After a lot of research, they have finally isolated that it's 3,2,1 MBT-thiol. MBT is a really long word. I don't know how to say it. So we'll just say MBT-thiol that creates the skunky smell. The tricky thing is that we as humans are super sensitive to very low concentrations of this volatile organic compound. Less than 0.0001% is produced by these flowering plants, and we smell it. Yeah. How do we filter that out? This is a conversation I want to have with all of you after this talk. Like, what do we do, right? How do we keep the good smells and only filter out the bad smells when there's such low concentrations? We can't even barely measure it with regular instrumentation. Particulates. Sticking with cannabis for a minute, Cannabis is a dioecious plant. That means that it has a female plant and a male plant. It's the female plant that has the flowers, that has the product that growers want to sell, whether it's flower or whether it's extract and to make gummies and tinctures and all those types of things. So we don't want to contaminate the female plant with male pollen. Growers are very concerned about bringing pollen into their facility from nearby hemp fields, right, or other outdoor or greenhouse operations that might have male plants either to breed or because they hermaphrodited or whatever, and so they're really concerned about keeping pollen out. Also, dust. I know it's really hard to see, but this facility, so I'm standing on the roof of a warehouse that's going to become a vertical farm. And I'm standing on the roof just checking out the existing HVAC equipment, seeing if there's anything we can salvage, which of course there isn't, except for maybe offices. This building right here is a rock crushing facility, no joke, sitting right across the street, right? Luckily, they called us to be part of the conceptual and early phases, right, the schematic design, so that we could identify this. But a lot of us engineers aren't brought on till later when they realize, oh crap, we need an HVAC system, we need to control our climate, let's call someone, and nobody's gonna go out and do a survey, right? This is a major dust hazard. We had another facility that has a compost operation across the street from where they are, right? So you may not realize that there are, especially in these urban environments where we have urban agriculture and local agriculture, that facilities like this could be a problem if you don't filter the air. And of course, in California and a lot of the West now, and even in Australia, I don't know where that speaker is, smoke and ash is a huge concern, not just for field farming, but also for indoor farming. Insects. Insects to us are a nuisance, right? But to plants, plants are food to a lot of insects, or they're the home, the nesting place for insects. So some insects are beneficial, some are symbiotic with our plants, and we want to keep them, like maybe honeybees for a tomato plant. They pollinate those plants, so we want to keep the honeybees, but we want to keep the aphids out. Aphids are jerks. Did you know that aphids are born pregnant? How the heck are you supposed to get rid of aphids when they're already born, ready to have a bait? I mean, it's ridiculous. So aphids are evil. But there's thrips, there's whiteflies, there's spider mites and russet mites and all sorts of different insects that can harm either the leaves or the roots or the flowers or the fruits of these various plants that we want to keep out. Plant pathogens, also, we want to keep out. The two that are the biggest concern, especially for cannabis, but for really all plants, is powdery mildew, which is shown here on the left, and gray mold, which is botrytis that you see on that strawberry plant. Those are the two biggest concerns for mold in the agriculture industry, at least molds from the air, not in the root system. There are viruses that are of concern. The tobacco mosaic virus actually started the whole scientific study of virology. Fun fact, I'm not going to go into that, but the thing, and cannabis gets hop latent virus. You see these beautiful tulips. Those variegated tulips were actually caused by a virus that would go for like $1 million back in, have any of you heard of like the Dutch tulip crash or whatever? It was like their housing bubble. They were buying diseased tulips, basically. Like COVID, unlike the flu and the cold, that are airborne viruses that affect and infect us, most plant viruses are transmitted by touch. Whether that's a person going from an infected plant to an infected plant with their hand, or their gloved hand, or their clipper tool, right? Or whatever it is, that any tool that they might be using. Viruses in plants transmit by touch. And there's not really a lot of airborne bacteria. If growers are talking to you about bacteria, they're talking about the water. Do any of you do water treatment? Water filtration? A few, okay. I'm not gonna talk about water. I was just curious, the crossover. Okay, so what are some of the technologies and techniques that we can do to abate, right, or prevent, excellent, to create good air quality? I'll just say that. Okay, so ventilation, right? Just like for us, let's start with clean air. Well, we'll talk about how we clean the air, but first let's just talk about replenishing the old air that's in here with some new air that's out there, right? In our case, again, we heard that AC unit kick on, which I haven't heard kick on for a minute. By the way, they need to do some maintenance. They need to like do some degreasing on that fan or damper, right? We're ultimately managing carbon dioxide, right? For a plant, we're managing the CO2 by replenishing CO2 that the plants took up during photosynthesis. So at minimum, we want enough ventilation to hit ambient CO2 levels, or at least not starving CO2 levels, which is probably around 250 parts per million. But also, you know, if people are affected by CO2 levels and their cognitive ability goes down and their, you know, motor skills reduce and they get sleepy, right? I'm trying to keep you guys awake here. You might want to ventilate more during high worker activity, right? Can't miss it. So having good ventilation is also good for worker health as in addition to plant health. We also, if a grower is enriching actively with CO2 to hit those 1,000 or 1,500 part per million concentrations, they are going to be required by their fire department to have an emergency purge system. That ventilation rate is almost always 1 CFM per square foot. And it's usually until the fire department arrives and can turn off the alarms. And also to dilute infected air, right? If you have an infected room, being able to eliminate the infected air could be of benefit. So I'm always really skeptical and push back on growers who say they want a 100% recirculating air system, because there's a lot of good reasons to at least have access to outside air. Particle filtration. First off, insect screens, right? We want to keep those insects out. So in a greenhouse, there are different levels of screens that you can buy on the intake to a greenhouse or on their open vents. And usually they opt for a thrip screen. So they want a screen that's small enough to keep the size insects out that are thrips, which are smaller than aphids. Okay, there's also bird screens, right? All that kind of good stuff. Let's talk about mold. Mold spores are actually pretty big. They're about the size of cat dander. In order to remove the majority of mold spores, all growers need is a MERV 11 filter. Usually we'll put a MERV 13 filter on for good measure. And always, if I'm specifying the HVAC equipment, I'm asking for a pre-filter that's a MERV 8 to capture the bigger stuff, and then a MERV 13 to capture the smaller stuff, because we know that filters are expensive. We also know that people don't usually change them and replace them as often as they should. So let's increase the longevity and just know who we're dealing with, right? And have a MERV 8 and then a MERV 13 filter. I don't want to see any of you selling HEPA filters to clean the air to an indoor grow facility unless it's for their offices and where the people live or people are working. Because again, viruses are only transmitted through touch for plants. They don't need HEPA filters. I feel like it's like a controversial statement to say this, but it's true. Let's talk about irradiation, okay? So UVC, I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir. This is actually a really fun talk for me because I usually talk very at the surface to growers to make sure that they aren't scammed or aren't going down some rabbit hole, or I'm talking to other engineers who just are specifying the filters, right, in their air handling units. So UVC, and Keith, if I get any of this wrong, you have to tell me. it denatures the DNA, right? It denatures protein and DNA as a protein. So that's how it kills microbes. And we see it a lot on coils, right, to keep them clean, right? We might also see them in ducts and other surfaces. But in an HVAC system, the air velocity is going so fast, right, through that air conditioner, like 2,500 feet per minute, that you might need 20 feet of length of UVC lamps. That's a huge cost, both in purchase, installation, as well as energy cost, right? That's another piece of energy, is running these UVC lamps. But it can be effective. Then we have UVV, okay? And it works mostly by ozone oxidation, through oxidation, and it produces ozone as an off gas. This can be very effective for killing odors. It can also kill microbes, but we would only recommend this in the exhaust airstream because it does produce ozone. Some of the challenges with irradiation is that you need line of sight, right? So in order to kill that microbe, the light has to see that microbe. And so you might want to filter the air out of all the particles that are in the air before you have the UV, right? To clean it, to remove all the things that might obstruct the line of sight. Also, if you increase the distance of the lamp to the thing you're targeting, right, you reduce the rate of disinfection, right? Because that light dissipates, right? It's not as strong as it is close to the lamp. So now, you're talking to me, the HVAC engineer, and I want a return duct or a supply duct that's 48 by 48. What's going to happen right down the middle of that tube? Is it going to get disinfected, or just the things close to the surface of the duct getting disinfected? Is that turbulent flow? Is that laminar flow, right? Okay. Speaking of ozonation, it is effective at odor mitigation, but you need it in large quantities for it to be very effective. If ozone can kill microbes, if ozone is bad for people, you can imagine that it might be bad for plants. Therefore, we don't want to produce ozone in the plant environment itself unless it's a very low concentrations. I don't know that anyone's actually done the research to figure out what the lowest concentration or the maximum concentration should be in order to not impact negatively plants. But I've heard a couple of growers say that they target 0.05 parts per million or less, and this is per the FDA. Ozonation is also really effective in water treatment. There's a water thing. We see it a lot to disinfect water. And there's actually an added benefit in water treatment with ozonation in that it oxygenates the water, and although the plants above the air need CO2, the roots are aerobic and need oxygen. So by ozonating the water, you can kill the microbes, you can do microbial disinfectant, and you can oxygenate the water delivered to the roots. Odor mitigation, I already talked about with one of the challenges, right? Very low concentrations of something that we're super sensitive to and is really more of a nuisance than anything else. Carbon filters are still the basic way to go. I'd love to see carbon filters that are targeted, that their pore size and shape and all that kind of good stuff are sort of targeted for this, for the MBT thiol. It's not there yet, but I think maybe there's some companies working on that. And you can use that on the recirculated air or on the exhaust air. Now, these indoor plant environments, I know I wasn't going to talk about climate too much, but they are humid. They could be 80 degrees and 65% relative humidity, and the humidity in the air actually decreases the efficacy of a carbon filter. So you might need more carbon filters than you think to make the air not smell, quote unquote, bad. Okay, again, UVV can work on odor mitigation, but we would only put that in the exhaust stream. And really it's about ozonation. If UVV is about ozonation, and you could ozonate the exhaust air leaving a room. I'll just say, I know, about room pressurization. There are some local codes in the country and elsewhere that say that these rooms should be negatively pressurized, the indoor plant environments, because they want to keep odors in. They're trying to contain odors. However, if you are a grower and you're trying to improve food safety and food security and have productive, healthy plants, right? That should be a positively pressurized room. We should be keeping things out of that room, right? That's the clean room environment. And so, we want a positive pressure if we can get away with it. I'll just say I designed them all positive pressure, and if the building inspector or plan checker says you have to change it, then usually I will explain why this is not hazardous. And I think only one time have I ever had to actually make it negative pressure. And, it all starts with people and sanitation and personal hygiene. People should be changing their clothes or gowning up, wearing hairnets, wearing gloves, not gloves that they're moving from room to room in, because if you have one room that's contaminated and another room that's clean, you want them to change in between those rooms so that they don't then infect the clean room, right? And one of the problems that you see a lot in cannabis facilities is that a lot of growers have their own home grows that might be outside or in their garage, and then they come in to, like a 50,000 square foot indoor cannabis facility and end up contaminating that facility with all the pests and pathogens that they had at their own home grow. So we want to try to avoid that. In conclusion, healthy air equals healthy plants, right? HVAC is not just about climate control, it's about air quality control. Carbon dioxide is important both to plant and people performance. You might change your ventilation strategy depending on what's going on in the room. Ethylene is bad for plants when you're growing them, great for plants when you want to ripen them before they arrive at your store shelf. We want to exclude pollen. We want to exclude pests and pathogens. We might want to mitigate odor if you're growing cannabis flower in an urban environment or where neighbors might complain. And really, air quality starts with people, both the people who are working in the facility and us who are designing and selling the systems to these facilities. That's the end. One thing I forgot to add on here is that I chaired or co-chaired the standard development for the new standard HVAC for indoor plant environments without sunlight. It was just published a year ago, October 2021. It was co-developed by ASHRAE and ASABE, which is the American Society for Agricultural and Biological Engineers. We go through all the various HVAC system types, and including air, filtration, and purification. So there's a whole section dedicated to the people in this room. We'd love to get your eyes on that, get any feedback on that for any future iterations of that standard. Okay, that's it. The name of that standard is HVAC for indoor plant environments without sunlight.
You were talking about the 321 MBT thiol.
Correct.
When does it go from a concentration that's a nuisance smell to like people feeling sick, or is that because it's such a nuisance, it's bothering them mentally? It makes them feel physically. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, some people might enjoy that smell and some people might not enjoy that smell. In fact, a lot of odor mitigation comes from nuisance complaints, from neighbor complaints who say that they smell it, which is why a lot of times you see cannabis facilities sort of concentrated in one area in like an industrial area, because they're less likely to affect, people who, I guess, homeowners, people who care. Though I'll tell you, there's this like cider place that we go to that's in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and it stinks to high heaven. Who wants to like live next to rotting apples or rotting apple smell? I'd much rather live next to a cannabis facility. I don't know the answer to your question. At what point? I think, like everything, if you've had COVID and you lost your sense of smell, you probably don't care anymore, right? But some people are super sensitive to different smells, and so it really just depends. And that's one of the challenges, is that it's hard to measure. The best way to measure is with people's noses, is with a human panel smelling And it's very subjective. Is there someone over here? I thought I saw a hand right behind you, Emily.
Have you ever run into the question of pesticides? Because cannabis facilities are often built where other agriculture
Yes.
is going on, and they're dusting, and that's a concern that we've faced.
Absolutely.
And how have you tackled that, or what issues do you see there?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Pesticide drift coming from field farms, coming into greenhouses or into indoor facilities can be a challenge, especially, cannabis is damned if you do and damned if you don't. You have to go through so many laboratory tests to say that you don't have any pests and you didn't use any, and you don't have no pesticide residue. So you can't, nothing, right? As clean as possible. And so cannabis growers are especially concerned about pesticide drifting into their facility because they want to pass their tests and they didn't use pesticides, right? So honestly, what we tell growers and what even some growers tell us is get to know your neighbors. Find out what their pesticide schedule is. Find out when they're going to. And in fact, a lot of counties, if you go to your farm bureau or your local county farm bureau, they will actually post the dates of pesticide distribution, thank you, at all the various farms and plots in the area. So you could actually, if you were a grower, you could actually go online, see when they're scheduled to deliver pesticides. That's a great time to have a recirculating air conditioning system on that day, right? I think carbon filters are also fairly effective, but it is a challenge. And I think, in that scenario, it's really about keeping it out as opposed to trying to control it at your site. That didn't make sense. You know what I mean? Close the doors, close the windows, basically.
I've got a question about an orchard in Yuba City, California.
Okay.
They do all of their mini orchard growing in lab space, and they basically have petri dishes, and they start off with small cuttings and then grow in the lab space.
Yep.
And they lose 8 to 10% of those small cuttings, even though there's small HEPA filters in each of these rooms. From your slides, it looks like because a lot of the contamination is by touch, those in-room HEPA filters aren't doing a thing for what they're trying to mitigate, which is the 8 to 10% of the yield that's going away. Do you have any recommendations, or is there another way I should be recommending design to them to improve what they're trying to do?
Yeah, make sure that they're cleaning their tools. Honestly, dipping their tools into a bleach water solution in between, transferring of every single one of, I'm assuming it's like tissue culture, kind of the way you're describing it, right? Those plants. It also could be ethylene. There could be ethylene in the air. If there is any sort of combustion, by the way, one of the byproducts of combustion, I didn't say, is ethylene. We don't care about ethylene, but plants do. So if they are using any sort of natural gas combustion from boilers or furnaces or anything, there could be some small concentration of ethylene that's entering the room that could be causing those plants to die off. So you can test for ethylene. Very low concentrations affect plant health. So yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the Talking Air Filtration Podcast, a production of the National Air Filtration Association. Clean air matters.